Okay, hello everybody. Yeah, apparently the MF was the first clock which wanted to say hi. So, yeah, hi guys. It seems that 2025 has come to an end, or is coming to an end since today is the 31st of December. And yeah, I was supposed to make a very long and emotional intro now, but I don't have the time to do that. So instead, I'll just get to the point. Today is the 31st of December, 2025. And it's about time I showed you the state of my collection as of today. Some clocks have appeared, some clocks have found new homes, but regardless, this room keeps ticking, so to say. I don't know. Yeah, this intro feels kinda stupid, but yeah, whatever. 31st of December, clock collection video, let's get to it. In the place where my Gustav Becker once stood now hangs this mid-1920s Maute box clock, which I bought in mid-August this year from the medieval festival held in my town. That's the best time of the year to buy clocks, since a lot of people gather around and they have some cool stuff to offer. The clock runs for 8 days on a full winding, and it strikes on the hour and on the half hour, with Bim Bam on 3 chime rods, the famous Maute Divina gong, the early version of it, which is slightly higher in pitch than the one we all know. And even though I was planning to sell this clock at a later time, I just fell in love with the sound of it, so it will be staying in here for a while longer. Okay, now ignoring this huge empty space below the Maute, here we have a pair of cuckoo clocks. 2 one-day cuckoo clocks made in the Black Forest in Germany by 2 different makers. This one was made by Hubert Herr in the late 1990s or perhaps the early 2000s. Yeah, everything is going off now. Okay, I just noticed that this one is quite a few minutes behind it, I don't know why. It might need to be wound. Yeah, okay. I'll be right back. Okay, let's try this again. So, here we have a pair of cuckoo clocks. Two one-day cuckoo clocks made in the Black Forest in Germany by two different makers. The one on the left is a Hubert Herr, made in the early 2000s or perhaps the late 90s. It's really small and cute. Those are the weights. It also has a sticker which confirms its authenticity. Approved by the Black Forest Cuckoo Clock Association. And there's also this lever which is used to silence the clock, if needed. Though I rarely use that thing. I think I only use it when I need to set the time and the clock is like 6 hours behind or something. And the one next to it is a little older. It's an E. Schmeckenbecher, made in September of 1976. It has a Regula movement. I believe it is a Regula 25. I don't know, probably. And I bought it in August this year. Actually, I bought it at the same time when I bought the Maute. Like, I think I bought it like 2 days later after I bought the Maute. From a different seller though. It's sadly missing the crown, but oh well, it is what it is. This huge thing in front of the cuckoo clocks is my OG, made by the New Haven Clock Company in the US in the late 19th century, I believe. I don't know, I'm not an expert on these, so yeah, I'm not quite sure. It has a very, very pretty painted bottom glass in here. That's the Westminster Abbey in London. And I don't know, I just love the way it looks. You may notice that despite the fact that it was made by New Haven, the label inside the clock says Jerome & Company. And I believe that is due to the fact that after New Haven bought Jerome & Company, their name had a really, really good reputation, and they kept using it on the labels inside their clocks for a while. I don't know, I believe that's what's going on in here, but I'm not quite sure. The clock runs for 30 hours on a full winding, and it is the loudest striking clock in my collection. I mean, you can literally hear this clock all the way from downstairs through closed doors. And yeah, that's quite an accomplishment. The clock next to it is a new addition, which you haven't seen before. I bought it a little over a month ago from a flea market. And it's a Badische Uhrenfabrik mantle clock. A very early one from the late 1800s. I believe it is from around 1890. And yeah, you can see that it's sort of falling apart. it literally started like disintegrating while I was carrying it, so it does need some attention. Above all these is one of my favorite clocks, a Junghans box clock with Westminster chimes, which runs for 8 days on a full winding and was made in 1913. In the 1912 catalog, this particular design was labeled as the model Schramberg 1. And I just love everything about this clock. The color, the overall design, the sound. It's just perfect. It's such a cool thing to have. The one next to it is a Junghans hanger clock, made between 1961 and 1963. It runs for 8 days on a full winding, and it strikes on the hour and on the half hour with bim bam on the famous Junghans membrane gong with 3 chime rods and a speaker membrane, which is supposed to amplify the sound. But yeah, regardless of that, this clock is pretty quiet. And it uses the Junghans... sorry, I was stuttering again. It uses the Junghans Werk 274. Fitted with an exacta balance. And here we have my Junghans long case clock, which ironically is missing, well, the case. It was made in October of 1928. It runs for 8 days on a full winding, and it strikes on the hour and on the half hour on 5 chime rods with bim bam. It has a lovely sound. It is really quiet though, because it doesn't have the resonance that it used to have in the case. Which is too bad. This one is my Junghans Mini Vienna. A small Vienna style clock, spring driven, made in the early 1890s. It has a very weird and early movement made by Junghans, which is miscentered for some reason. It is fitted into the case so that the dial is in the center. It runs for 8 days on a full winding, and it strikes on the hour and on the half hour on a coiled gong. And like most Vienna style clocks, it has some glass panels on the sides, which allow you to see through them and view the movement. And yeah, since this is an early Junghans, it has open mainsprings, which is quite unusual for an 8-day clock. But yeah, that's just the way they made it over 100 years ago. The one next to it is the first box clock that I ever got. A Yantar, made in the USSR in the 1990s. It's a really late Yantar. And this year, I actually managed to glue this plastic bit back on. So, yeah, that's great, I guess. Yay! The clock runs for 8 days on a full winding, and it strikes on the hour and on the half hour with bim bam on 3 chime rods. This one is my one and only Cuckoo Quail clock, made by Hubert Heer in the 1960s in Germany, in the Black Forest. It is still incomplete. It's missing the bellows. Well, I do have the quail bellow, but that thing's broken, so I'll need to sort it out, find a new bellow top for it, I guess. And it runs for about 30 hours, I'd say. And yeah, if you're wondering why the cuckoo weight isn't on, you'll find out later in the video. Ugh. It's a very pretty clock nonetheless. I don't know. I just love the way it looks. This is a Romanian cuckoo clock made by Victoria Arad in the 1970s. It runs for about 30 hours on a full winding. And yeah, as you might see, the quality is not quite the best. But that's just the way it is. That's the Victoria logo in there. And this clock has something which most cuckoo clocks don't have, and that is a Vienna deadbeat escapement. Yes, a Vienna deadbeat escapement in a cuckoo clock. That's not something that you see every day. This one is my Vedette transistor Atomat wall clock, which was made in France in the 1970s. I do not know for sure when it was made. The oldest repair date that it has is from 1979, so the clock could be older than that. The movement was made by the Rhythm Clock Company in Japan, and it strikes on the hour and on the half hour with Bim Bam on 2 chime rods. The one below it is another French clock made by Odo. My Odo Jacquemart. That's what it's called apparently. It has this figurine in here, which strikes on a bell every hour and half hour, but the actual sound is produced by a chime rod, which you might be able to see back there. It runs for 8 days on a full winding, and it has a very pretty color. And here we have another French clock and one of the centerpieces of my collection, my MF Manu France box clock with Saint Etienne chimes. It was made in the 1940s, runs for 8 days on a full winding, and the movement inside it is a Giraud. This particular design is known as the Type C, and I actually pulled it off. I managed to finish working on this clock before 2026. I worked real hard on it 2 days ago, and here it is in all its glory. Next to the MF are some unfinished projects and some clocks which will sooner or later find a new home. Behind all that is my Giraud dual chime box clock, made in France in the 1940s, around the same time as my MF. They actually shared the same movement, but with different chime barrels. This one also runs for 8 days on a full winding, and it plays the Westminster chimes and bells of Jura. Now, moving up here, we have two clocks very different from each other. This one is my Junghans Electrogong, which was made around 1970 in Germany. It strikes on the hour and on the half hour with Bim Bam on the Junghans Membrane Gong with 3 chime rods. And the one behind it is another Yantar, made in the USSR, around 1975 I'd say. It runs for 8 days on a full winding, and it strikes on the hour and on the half hour with Bim Bam on 3 chime rods. This is actually one of my favorite Yantar designs, and I'm really happy that I managed to get this thing. On my shelves we have some random alarm clocks. This one right here is my Bayard, made in France, which I nicknamed the Minecraft Ice Block for obvious reasons. And this one and this one were made by Yantar in the USSR. This one, I'd say it was made around 1980, and this one was made in 1973. Down here are my Chinese clocks, made by various different makers, but despite that, they share the same movement, with different bit rates. And, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Oh my gosh, I keep burping, damn. Yeah, going back here, this is my Junghans carriage clock, made in 1910. Which runs for 30 hours on a full winding, and unlike most carriage clocks, it strikes the hour and the half hour on a bell. Which is something quite interesting, I'd say. This one is my Mayak desk clock, which runs for 8 days on a full winding. It's a time-only clock. Behind it is an abomination of a mental clock. I don't even want to think about it. And right here is another centerpiece of my collection. A Junghans mantle clock, a huge Junghans mantle clock to be precise, made in 1958, which runs for 8 days on a full winding and plays the Westminster chimes. However, there's something really special about this clock. It has a loudspeaker sort of assembly mounted below the case. You can't really see it, and I can't actually show it to you properly. And it also has insanely long chime rods. I mean, this clock almost sounds like a grandfather clock. And it's honestly one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And I'm really glad that I was able to get it. These clocks are pretty rare. And behind it is my Kininger mantle clock, which I'm planning to sell in the not so distant future. This is my Junghans tall-shaped clock, made in 1905. That was it striking. It runs for 30 hours on a full winding, and it strikes on the hour and on the half hour on a coiled gong. Next to it is a Pragotron slave clock, made in 1985, I believe. Wait, let's check. It appears it was 1986. Close enough. Wait, let me put it back. Okay. And this one is my Junghans Hanger Clock's older brother, made in 1958 or 1959. Also runs for 8 days, also has the Junghans membrane gong and the Junghans W274 movement fitted with an exacta balance. However, I believe that this one looks better. Remember that. These are my alarm clocks. There's a whole lot of them. And somehow we finally reached the mantle clocks. Damn, that thing took like an hour and a half and I'm not even halfway done. This is my Perfecta wall clock, which I usually keep on a shelf or something like this, since I'm lacking space on the wall. It was made in the 1970s in Germany. It has an Urgos movement inside. It runs for 8 days on a full winding and it strikes on the hour and on the half hour with Bim Bam on 3 chime rods. In front of it is my Junghans leather covered mantle clock. I absolutely love this thing. It was made in 1958. It has a model number of 16/5077. And it strikes on the hour and on the half hour on a membrane gong. It has a loudspeaker sort of assembly and 3 chime rods. It strikes with Bim Bam. And in case I didn't mention it because I can't remember, it runs for 8 days on a full winding. And it also has the Junghans W274 movement. And there, like there, sorry, I don't know what's wrong with me. That one is my likely Austrian mantle clock, made in the early 1900s in southern Germany, or Austria, as I said before. It runs for 14 days on a full winding, and it strikes on the hour and on the half hour on a coiled gong. This clock is of extremely good quality. The carvings of the case are exquisite, and it has a high quality movement inside, fitted with a Vienna deadbeat escapement. On the shelf below we have my HAC mantle clock, made in 1933, fitted with a Junghans movement, a W77/400 movement. It runs for 8 days on a full winding and it strikes on the hour and on the half hour on 3 chime rods with Bim Bam. It has a really nice Art Deco design. This is a small mantle clock made by Dujena in Germany in 1963. It has a Franz Hermle und Söhne movement inside, which runs for 8 days on a full winding, and it strikes on the hour and on the half hour on 3 chime rods with Bim Bam. And next to it is my Ansonia mantle clock, made in the 1920s, I'd say, which runs for 8 days on a full winding, and it strikes on the hour and on the half hour on a coiled gong. It has a really unusual case, which looks like a clover. This is a 1959 Junghans mantle clock, made in Germany, which runs for 14 days on a full winding. It has a W278 movement inside, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it's a 278, fitted with an exacta balance. And it strikes the hours and the half hours on 5 chime rods with Bim Bam. It has a very deep and beautiful sound. Behind it is a Hermle mantle clock made in the late 50s. Nothing special. Runs for 8 days, strikes on the hour and on the half hour with Bim Bam on 3 chime rods. And that thing in there is one of my only English clocks, or I think it's actually my only English clock that I have. A Gerard Mantel clock with Westminster chimes made in 1944, which runs for 8 days on a full winding. It has retained the original key, pendulum bob, and instruction manual. This is a very small Perfecta mantel clock made at some point in the 20th century. I have no idea when it was made. It's a time-only clock which runs for 8 days. Behind it is an Atlanta tall-shaped clock, or I usually refer to this thing as a free glass clock. Made in 1977, it has a Hermle strike and wind movement inside. It has an electrical motor which, on the hour, when the clock starts striking, drives the actual striking train and also winds the clock at the same time. It strikes on the hour and on the half hour with bim bam on 2 bells. And next to them is a Kinsley Westminster chiming mantel clock made around 1925 in Germany. It runs for 8 days on a full winding, and I love this thing to death. It's so cool. It's one of the softest sounding clocks in my collection. It's really soft. I mean, you can't even hear it triggering, it just sort of starts chiming. It's really cool. Over here we have a Junghans gallery wall clock, which was made between 1949 and 1950. It's a time-only clock, which runs for about 8 days. It has a Geneva stopwork mechanism, which prevents you from winding the clock from overwinding the clock. And given this fact, it runs for about 6 days actually. But, oh well, I think it's not set up properly, I can't speak. I think it's not set up properly or something, I don't know. It's a very pretty clock nonetheless. And below it is another time-only clock made by Victoria Arad in Romania in the 1970s. It runs for 14 days on a full winding. It has an open mainspring and a Vienna deadbeat escapement. And that should be it with this corner. So that means that we're going to my room. And now that we're in my room, we'll start with this 1957 Junghans loudspeaker wall clock, which is part of my favorite series of Junghans loudspeaker clocks, the colored ones. There's 6 of them in total, and I only have 5 more to find. Yeah, this clock runs for 8 days on a full winding. It has the Junghans 748 movement inside. And it's actually... wait, how should I put this? This clock is a little different from normal loudspeaker wall clocks of this type. Would you shut up, please? Okay, thanks. Yeah, I mean, this thing, on the half hour it does bim bam. And on the hour, the high note hammer is lifted away and it only does bam. I've never seen another clock of this type which does this, so it's a premiere for me. And it's something really cool to have. And also, the dial is made out of a really interesting material, which is similar to what vinyl discs are made of, sorry. It has this sort of texture, which is pretty cool. And next to it is the original centerpiece of my collection, so to say. I don't know. I like to consider this as the main attraction of my collection, since it's pretty awesome. A French box clock made by Vedette in 1938, also known as my Electrovedette, since this clock is supposed to wind itself up every few hours when the time-side mainspring is running out of power. However, the motor bit, or the electrical bit I should say, is broken, and the previous owner made a hole through the dial, which leads to the single winding arbor, which is connected to all the three mainsprings. So I now wind this clock manually every morning and before going to sleep. It plays the Westminster chimes, as you heard a few minutes ago, and it's just perfect. This clock right here is my Kinsley box clock, a small box clock made in Germany in the 1940s, which runs for 8 days on a full winding, and it strikes on the hour and half hour with bim bam on 3 chime rods. It's really small and cute. And up here we have a huge Hermle mantle clock, which plays the Westminster chimes and runs for 8 days on a full winding. It was made in the late 50s or perhaps the early 60s. And that is an unfinished project. Okay. This clock right here is the first mechanical clock that I ever got. A Mayak cuckoo clock made in the 60s in the USSR, which is sadly not running right now as it needs a good clean. It runs for about 30 hours on a full winding, and Dad gave me this clock when I was 6 on my birthday. This one right here is my Cima desk clock made in Switzerland. It has a ports cap movement inside, a really rare and highly valuable electromechanical movement, and also pretty sensitive. It has a solid brass case, which makes it pretty heavy. The one below it is my trusty Yantar calendar clock, which displays the date, the time, and the days of the week in Romanian. It's the first and only clock I've seen with the calendar in Romanian, made by Yantar, of course. It was made in the 1970s, or perhaps the 1980s, and it has a transistorized movement. This one is another unfinished project, or actually it's pretty difficult to explain. I mean, I broke this clock purely by accident while experimenting with it because it wasn't working, and now I need to find a new escape wheel for it, and yeah, that's pretty sad. It's a Jazz transistor automat wall clock made in France in the 1970s, I'd say, or perhaps a little earlier, sorry. Yeah, it has a transistorized movement, and it's a pretty cool thing. It would have been even cooler if it worked. This clock right here is my Seiko Melodies in Motion wall clock, the collector's edition from 2006. It plays 8 different songs, which include some tunes, I guess, from the Beatles. And down here we have another huge mantle clock made by Junghans in July of 1952, which runs for 8 days on a full winding, and it strikes on the hour and on the half hour with Bim Bam on 5 chime rods. It has one of my favorite Bim Bam tunings ever. And it's a pretty cool thing. So that's why I'm keeping it in my room. And this clock right here is my trusty Slava alarm clock made in the USSR in the 1980s, which wakes me up every day to go to school. I'm now letting it rest for a while since it's been serving me for about 5 years. And it deserves some rest during my winter break. And moving here is my best friend. Another Junghans loudspeaker wall clock, made in 1963. And you just heard it strike. It runs for 8 days on a full winding, and it has the Junghans W748 movement inside of it. And down here is a miniature street clock, which I bought while I was in Austria 2 years ago. Even though it's quartz, it's a pretty cool thing. I don't know, I just love it. It's really small and cute. And that should be all the clocks from my room. So, I guess now we're going downstairs. Yeah, I'm not waiting for you to chime, sorry. Okay, now ignoring the noise from the background, this is my Carl Werner Vienna style wall clock, which was made in the late 1890s. It runs for 14 days on a full winding, and it strikes on the hour and on the half hour on a quailed gong. It's one of the most accurate clocks in my collection. And it gets to sit next to my Christmas tree. And this should hopefully be the last one. My Vladimir mantle clock, made in the 1950s in the USSR, which runs for 14 days on a full winding. And it strikes on the hour and on the half hour with Bim Bam on 4 chime rods. My parents liked the way it looked, so now it gets to sit in my office on proper display. And here are some clocks that I missed. This one is my Zuawerk Black Forest shield clock, made in the late 1800s, around 1890. It runs for 30 hours on a full winding, and it's a Zuawerk, a grand sonnery clock with only 2 weights. I don't have any free nails on the wall at the moment, so it's sitting here. And below it is my antique cuckoo clock, which runs for 30 hours on a full winding. I hate it. I believe I haven't tested it yet, but yeah, that's... oh, wait, this thing is a little broken up in here. Oh my god, kill me. Oh crap. Oh well. Guess we'll have to do this. Let me take this out. Okay, I didn't mean to do that, but oh well, as you wish. This is going straight into bloopers. And now we've finally reached the end. You've seen the entirety of my collection as of the 31st of December 2025. And holy crap, this thing took way too long. But regardless, the video is done. I hope you enjoyed it and that you liked my clocks. And honestly, I want to thank you all for all the support that you've given me throughout this year. 2025 has been a really tough year for me. And I don't know, I just hope 2026 will be a little better at least. Not just for me, for everyone. And I don't know. Despite everything, life keeps ticking, I guess. So once again, thank you guys for watching this video. I was Luca, and we'll see each other again in 2026. Happy early new year. Oh my gosh, how did I mess it up at the end, bruh? Happy early new year, everybody. I was Luca. Good night.